The Medal of Honor series, Lessons of Core Values, is a production of the Army Heritage Center Foundation. The series sponsors include the Qualix team, Qualix and Iron Mountain. Qualix Corporation provides support services for the federal markets in the areas of information management and mission-oriented programs. Iron Mountain provides solutions for records management, data backup and recovery, and document management. And the Pritzker Military Museum and Library of Chicago, established by Colonel Retired Jennifer Pritzker, a nonpartisan institution dedicated to the study of the citizen soldier as an essential element for the preservation of democracy. This specific program is supported through the generous donations of members of the Army Heritage Center Foundation Board of Directors. Our host today is Colonel Retired Tom Vossler. Tom is a combat veteran of the Vietnam War, a past director of the U.S. Army Military History Institute, a licensed battlefield guide at Gettysburg National Military Park, and an author of 4 books on the Civil War. Our guest is Sergeant Gary Beikirch. Gary was awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions on April 1st, 1970 in Vietnam. He will discuss the Medal of Honor and the application of core values in daily life.
Greetings to everyone out there. This is Tom Vossler, your moderator for this evening's presentation. Warm greetings from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, perhaps the best known small town in the United States. You can probably guess that for an old soldier in his 70s, one of the questions I get when I'm doing battlefield tours out there is, Mister, did you really fight here at Gettysburg? Were you in the Army back then? And I say, no, 30 years in the Army, but no, not at Gettysburg. And go on to explain that Vietnam was where I was. 50 years ago was April 1st, 50 years ago. Gary was in action. We're going to speak to Gary in a minute. And the group I was with, our outfit, we had just come out of Cambodia. And President Nixon had allowed us to go in there and clean out the sanctuary areas. And we were just coming back. I took some rest and relaxation in Hawaii, met my wife there, and came back and finished up my tour. So that's, believe it or not, 50 years ago. So we're looking back in time, as British Prime Minister Winston Churchill observed, that the farther backward in time you look, the farther forward in time you can see. And for this 7-part series, we're going to use the 6 values of the Medal of Honor and the Medal of Honor Society to talk not only about history, but to talk about all those things associated with being a citizen, to include courage, sacrifice, patriotism, citizenship, integrity, and commitment. Tonight's session is an overview session. And Gary Beikirch is going to give us some information about his background and about the program and what each of these values have a meaning for us as citizens. In subsequent programs, in the following 6 Thursday nights, we will treat each of these values in turn with a new guest giving experiences. And so that's how we're going to run the program. Gary, hello, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Mentioning you looking back at history, I never thought I would live long enough to have many of the events that I experienced studied as history, from the Cuban Missile Crisis right up through the assassinations of President Kennedy and Senator Kennedy. A lot's happened in the 73 years that I've been around.
Well, that's exactly right. We've seen a lot of things. We've seen a lot of changes, and perhaps though also there are some constants that we need to keep reminding ourselves. Now, I was in what we would call the conventional forces. I was in an infantry rifle platoon leader in a battalion, mechanized infantry battalion in Vietnam. Gary served in the Special Forces. He was a Green Beret. Gary, tell us, when was it in your life that you decided to become a Green Beret?
Well, I think it was, I had started college back in '65, and Vietnam was pretty new, but there was still quite a lot of controversy about it. And I was always the kind of person that didn't want to take secondhand knowledge. What I wanted to do is, if I wanted to find out something or know something, I felt that I wanted to experience it. And I was in college. The girl that I had been going with at the time in college broke up with me. So I decided that what I would do would quit college and go in the Army. That's what everybody did back then when you ended up in a breakup, you know, and I'd come back as a Green Beret and show her what she had missed, what she had given up. But I had read a book by Robin Moore called The Green Berets. And I was just really impressed with the philosophy behind their fighting, the philosophy about becoming one with a group of people, their unconventional warfare. All that really fit into who I was at the time. And I decided that I wanted to go to Vietnam to find out what Vietnam was really like. And if I was going to go to Vietnam, I wanted to go with a group that I would have the best chance of experiencing everything that Vietnam had to give me. And so I decided to go into the Special Forces, the Green Berets. And my dreams and ambitions were realized from the very moment that I became a Green Beret and entered into the jungles of Vietnam. It was quite an experience.
Your training as a Green Beret, your training in the Special Forces was somewhat different from what we had in the conventional force. Tell us a little bit about the rigor and the added physical aspect of being a special operator, Special Forces.
Well, we were trained to try to handle any situation. The regular military training was a physical challenge that tested me physically. Airborne training, jumping out of airplanes, took that physical training to an even higher level. Airborne was a real tough school to go through. But then going into the Special Forces training, there was a challenge there that was not only physical, but it was emotional, it was mental. They tried to take each of us to our breaking points to realize that we could do more than we ever thought we could. We had to be able to operate in unconventional situations behind enemy lines without a lot of the support that the regular conventional units had. We operated in just 12-man teams, 12 other soldiers. We were all trained cross-trained in a variety of skills, light weapons, demolitions, medical. I was trained in light weapons and medic. So in our team, I was responsible for the medical care of every person on that team. But then when we went to Vietnam, I thought I'd been prepared for everything, except in the preparation, when I found out that I was going to be going into the jungles of Vietnam, I'd never really encountered any training that helped me get over my fear of snakes. I was kind of afraid when I found out I was going to be living with a group of Montagnards. These were jungle people. Could you put up the slide, Mike, the first slide with a typical Montagnard home? These were Montagnard people, and they lived in the jungles, and you can see that they lived as a family. The family units were very, very important. I remember going to find it when I found out I was going to be going into the jungles. I found a Montagnard boy, and you can see the little boy on the right-hand side there. He looks like he was maybe about 13 or 14 years old. But in the Montagnard culture, individuals became contributing members of the society, contributing members of the village when they reached an age of 12. 12 years old, they had to become functioning members of the tribe, necessary so that all the tribe could live and survive in the jungle. When I got there, I found a 15-year-old Montagnard boy. His name was Deo, and I said, look, I've got to tell you, you need to help me survive in the jungle because I'm afraid of snakes. I'm afraid of tigers. I don't know how I'm going to survive in the jungle. And he laughed at me and he said something to me that stayed with me my entire life, because he said, I don't want to teach you how to survive in the jungle. He said, because the jungle provides us our way of life. He said, I want to teach you how to live in the jungle. I want to teach you how to be able to go into the jungle and see things that can bring you life, not things that you're going to be afraid of. He said, if you're afraid of snakes, when you go into the jungle, everywhere you look, you're going to see snakes all over the place. And he said, I want to teach you how to survive, because if all you see is snakes, you're going to be missing things that will help you learn how to live. So for the year that I was with him, with Deo, he taught me how to live. And could you go to the next slide? I'll talk more about Deo, I'm sure, in the future. But we took these Montagnards from the villages that you saw, some of their villages there, and we brought them into a defensive camps that their bunkers were underground. They lived underground now. And this looks pretty primitive, but I have to tell you that living with these Montagnards in these primitive conditions underground, I learned more about love. I learned more about living. I learned more about what it meant to be a part of a group. That in the midst of this jungle, in the midst of a war, I learned what it meant to really live. And that had a big influence on my life. And our job as Special Forces guys were to be able to teach these Montagnards the different skills about patrolling, ambushing. We use them as mercenaries. And you couldn't go to the next slide there, Mike. This is our Montagnard security team. That was me down in the right-hand corner. And Deo, the one that was in my bodyguard, he was up in the top corner with his hat on. And he'll become very, very instrumental in my story and in my life, and actually critical as to why I ended up working with middle school kids for 33 years as a middle school counselor. But I don't want to get too far ahead, Tom, but that's what we did. We went into the jungle, we trained these Montagnards, and we used them as mercenaries to fight the war. We were near the Ho Chi Minh Trail. We monitored the flow of supplies in the North Vietnamese. We did a lot of ambushes, anything we could do to disrupt their maneuvers and their strategies. But it was an amazing, amazing time. And the Montagnards were a significant part of my life.
So the camp that was built with American resources advice, but the Montagnards are working also to prepare this camp for basically defensive purposes, survival, and that's the reason they're living underground was protection. Is that right?
Yes, the North Vietnamese, as well as most of the Vietnamese, were not too keen on the Montagnards. They were an ethnic minority, and they would like nothing better than to get rid of the Montagnards. But the Montagnards inhabited the highlands, the jungles of Vietnam. And the highlands were a very strategic location in the war. So there was always a lot of battles and always a lot of hot things going on in the jungles. And we went in there to just help them be able to exist, because the North Vietnamese wanted to annihilate them. The South Vietnamese really looked down upon them. So we were there to act as allies. And actually, what developed between the Americans and the Montagnards, especially with me and my Montagnard bodyguard Deo, it developed what military commonly calls camaraderie. And I define a camaraderie as having a relationship with somebody where you agree to be able to trust that person so much that you're willing to put your life in their hands. And you want that person to know that you care about them enough that they can put their life in your hands. And you will do anything necessary to keep them safe. You will have their back 24/7. And that camaraderie was a feeling that existed among many of the military people and among the team members of the Special Forces team. But there was a special camaraderie that existed between us and the Montagnards. We became part of their village. One of our goals, which really was different than the conventional Army, was we went in there to try to teach them. But in order to try to teach them, we had to become students because this was their culture, this was their land. So we went in as students and we said, we want you to teach us how to become what you are. There was a certain humility that existed in order for us to become students and in order for us to become effective in our mission of assimilating into the Montagnard culture and using them in the war effort. It was a very unique experience for a 24-year-old kid, which is what I was at the time.
Well, I understand fully your relationship with Deo because my experience as a platoon leader is we had within the platoon 4 Vietnamese Tiger Scouts, as they were called, and the senior scout was a fellow named Juan.
Mm-hmm.
And Juan also had the additional duty as my personal bodyguard. And so I think the relationship between you and Deo, between me and Juan, can we sum it up as a value of commitment? We made a commitment one to the other, and that commitment stayed. Unfortunately, Deo and Juan are not going to survive this. You and I are, but that memory, as we look back, we remember in our older years now, commitment. And I think that the youngsters out there should think about that. What are you committed to in terms of your life values? And we'll talk more perhaps on that later. So what happened? You are one of 262 recipients of the Medal of Honor during the period of the Vietnam War. What's your story about the action that's going to lead to you being a recipient of that award for valor?
Well, as I mentioned, I was the medic on this team of 12 Americans, and we lived in that village, that fortified camp. And being the medic, I was not only responsible for all the medical care, I was responsible for the veterinary care. I took care of all the animals. I was the dentist, although many of the Montagnards didn't really practice good dentistry, except maybe filing down their teeth. It was a sign of beauty if they had their teeth filed down. It was a strange culture. But I wore many hats as the medic on the team, taking care of 2,300 people in that camp. As I said, anyone who was 12 years old or older was a combatant. We had a 12-year-old M60 machine gunner. So when you were talking about commitment and asking the young people who may be listening about what are you committed to, one of the things that I like to share and that I shared with all my students in the 30 years that I worked with them as a middle school counselor is that values like commitment do not depend on your age. We had 12-year-olds, 15-year-olds in that Montagnard village who were committed to each other, committed to us. They believed in something. They were dedicated to it. And their actions every day proved their commitment. Well, there was 450 combatants, those that were 12 years old or older. On April 1st, our camp came under siege. We were surrounded for over 30 days by about 10,000 of the North Vietnamese. There was 10,000 against 450 Montagnards, 12 Americans. And within the first few hours of the camp, it was just continuous artillery, rocket, mortar fire. After hours of bombardment, they then launched their ground attacks, and they had dug tunnels underneath the wire. So they popped up during the wire, and pretty much within the first few hours, there was real close combat, hand to hand in some cases. Within the first few hours of the attack, I was wounded in the back with fragments from a 122 millimeter rocket. I remember getting hit by it, and as soon as I got hit, people often ask me, what's it like to get shot? And I said, well, when I first got hit with the rocket, I thought I got kicked by a horse. But I tried to get up after I landed, and I couldn't move because the shrapnel had lodged in my spine, and I kind of knocked out my spinal cord. And so I'm lying there in the midst of this jungle with the enemy coming at you, and I'm wondering, what am I going to do? I can't move. But all of a sudden, I feel somebody lifting me up, and I looked, and it was Dale, my 15-year-old Montagnard bodyguard. And Dale carried me throughout the battle. Everything that I did, all the fighting, the helping other people who were wounded, I did because Dale carried me. I got shot in the side with small arms. Dale took me down to the medical bunker. I told him, no, we need to stay up here and fight. So this 15-year-old boy carried me back into the battle. I got hit again in the stomach, and he took me down in the bunker again, and people thought I was going to die at that point. And I remember saying, if I'm going to die, I'm not dying down here. I want to die in battle. Take me back to the battle, Dale. Dale, this committed young man to me, committed to our friendship, committed to our protecting one another, carried me back out into the midst of the battle, and we continued to fight. We heard a rocket coming in. Well, before that, Dale got shot in the leg, and he couldn't carry me anymore. So he started dragging me. And when he couldn't drag me, I would drag him. But picture this, we have two of us just dragging and fighting through the battle. A 15-year-old Montagnard boy and myself. We hear a rocket coming in. Dale rolled me over, laid on top of me. The rocket exploded. I said, okay, Dale, come on, we gotta get going. Dale didn't move because Dale was killed. He had protected me from that rocket blast. Two more Montagnards picked me up, put me on a stretcher, and we continued to fight until I was medevaced. But everything that I did, all the battle, the helping, bringing Americans down into the bunker, helping the Montagnards that were wounded, I did because this 15-year-old Montagnard boy carried me because he loved me and we had been committed to one another. That sacrifice, that commitment, as you said, Tom, it bothered me for a lot of years. The guilt, the anger that I felt. And it's only been, recently and stuff that I've been able to work through that and really focus on the love that was shared between the two of us. Focus on the values of what that meant. What did this 15-year-old Montagnard boy teach me during that time that we spent in the jungles of Vietnam? And actually, the things that he taught me corresponded dramatically to all those values that are represented within the Medal of Honor that you had mentioned: courage, commitment, sacrifice, citizenship, patriotism, integrity. And those will be the values that we'll be talking about in this seminar series. But Dale had a big influence on me because he showed me that a young person, even though he's only 15, has the potential of realizing and having those values operate in his life every day. And that life that he gave to me, that example, is what motivated me to want to work with young people, to spend 33 years as a middle school counselor, trying to instill in them and teach them the lessons that Dale taught me about courage, about sacrifice, and how that you don't have to be 18, 19, 20 years old before you can start living a life of meaning. Dale did it at 15. And that was the message that I took into the school system, that young people have the potential to make a difference in the lives of others if they believe in something, if they have courage and commitment and sacrifice in their life. And that's what this series of seminars is all about.
You mentioned, Gary, the 18 and 19 and 20-year-olds, and that rings a bell firmly with me because when I took command of my platoon in 1969, I just turned 23 years old. When I took command of my platoon in 1969, I instantly became the oldest man in the platoon. And so the soldiers, the men, 18, 19, 20 years old. And I say men because they matured very quickly in that type of environment and held their maturity. Your coming home from Vietnam was different from my coming home. I was not seriously wounded, as you were. I remained in the Army for 28 more years after Vietnam. And in the immediate time frame after Vietnam, then I was surrounded down at infantry school at Fort Benning, teaching in the weapons department, by men who had the same experiences I had in Vietnam. And the peaks and the valleys in our mental state after we came back, then it was easier for me because I was with people that had been through the same thing that I did. And so there was an understanding. We didn't have to explain ourselves to one another. Can I ask you then, your coming home is different from mine.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that, how it impacted you?
Well, like you, Tom, my goal, my ambition, once I became a Green Beret, was that was going to be my career. That was going to be my niche. I thought that I had found my goal in life, my mission. Special operations, special forces was what I had trained for. It's what I had striven for. That the accomplishment of getting the Green Beret was a tremendous, tremendous success to my life. But coming back, because of my wounds, I found it necessary that I had to get out of the military, because back at that time, it was unlike today where individuals can serve. Even we have amputees that are still serving, but back then they were getting rid of individuals that couldn't do their jobs anymore. And because of my wounds and the profiles, the limitations that I had placed on me, I was not able to stay in Special Forces. And I thought that they were going to send me to some conventional unit and I wouldn't be able to do what I'd been trained to do. So I opted to get out of the military. I got out of the military, went back to college, switching my major to pre-med. And I wasn't on the college campus here in Western New York any more than maybe a couple months. And back in the 70s, colleges were a crazy place to be for anybody who had been in the military. There was so much anti-war feelings going on. There was so much hate and anger. And many of us who came back from Vietnam and got out of the military, we were hoping to be able to find some peace. We were hoping to be able to find some place to heal from the trauma of war. We were hoping maybe to find somebody like you had, individuals who could understand, and we could just kind of share and talk and not have to try to explain everything, but somebody who could just really identify with what we had gone through. Unfortunately, most of us didn't find that in civilian life. I got spit on pretty quickly. Students, when they would see me wearing my Army fatigue jacket, they'd push me. They'd push my books off the table in the library. There were just some really mean things that happened to me. So coming back from Vietnam with all the guilt and the anger that I had from losing my friends and the people, the things that I had done over there, all that anger and that guilt, the anger that I was now feeling from the place, the country that I thought I was going to be able to find some source of healing and peace from, I didn't have that, and that anger and that hate just added to the feelings that I had about myself. And it was a real tough thing to try to deal with. And my solution to that was, I just got to get away. If I can get away, get alone, if I can find some place to hide, I will get better. If I could just forget about Vietnam, I will feel better, and then I'll be able to heal from the war. So I took off and I went to northern New Hampshire in the White Mountains, and I found a cave to live in. And I lived in that cave for 18 months, again, believing that if I could just forget about the war, I would get better. But I wasn't in that cave 2-3 weeks, and all of a sudden I was notified that I was going to be awarded the Medal of Honor. Now here I am hiding in a cave in northern New Hampshire trying to forget about the war. And I find out through a little message that I had in my post office box down in Lancaster, New Hampshire, that I was going to be awarded the Medal of Honor. And I said, wow, what is this all about? All of a sudden, everything in Vietnam that I've been trying to forget, the war, the anger, the guilt, all that came back. And now it was added with this greater burden of they're going to give me a medal. Now I had to figure out, why me? I don't deserve this medal. And so that was just one more thing I had to try to deal with in the cave, trying to not only understand what Vietnam meant, but understand what this Medal of Honor meant. What does it mean to wear this Medal of Honor? And why me? How can I make this a part of my life? How can I take what Vietnam did to me and turn that into something positive? How can I turn that into something to build my life on? Because I could not build my life on the hate and the anger that I was feeling. Trying to build my life on hate and anger forced me to go into a cave, and I knew I couldn't do that anymore. So I spent the next 18 months trying to figure out what this Medal of Honor meant and what Vietnam meant to me.
Well, that commitment then, and the integrity and the building, and can we say rebuilding, really,
Yes.
of you as a person, and I think all that's a marvelous story. I forgot to mention at the outset, folks, that we will have a question and answer period. If you will submit your questions, Tim is going to take those and compile those, and we'll begin the Q&A here in just a few minutes. So we have today 68 living Medal of Honor recipients. Mm-hmm. And so you fellas and lady get together every once in a while. Is there a woman recipient?
The only woman recipient was Dr. Mary Walker from the Civil War.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So you get together every once in a while, and
that's something that we really look forward to. And unfortunately, because of COVID, we're not going to. Well, we're still going to have this convention this year in Fort Worth, but many of us have decided not to go because of the health risk, and most of us are in our 70s now, some in the 90s.
Yeah. That's true. Well, I remember y'all were here at Gettysburg, I'm going to say 3-4 years ago. Did you make that trip?
That was a good time. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was interesting. Everybody coming to Gettysburg, where we had some Medals of Honor awarded. In fact, of the Civil War era, over 1,500 Medal of Honor awarded, and that does not include some that were rescinded later after they got full evidence of what did or did not happen according to the write-ups.
You know, Tom, you mentioned that when you came back, you spent time in the military, and that really helped you to make that transition from Vietnam and war to a stateside service and continuing on in the military. Those conventions that we go to provide for those of us that are recipients that same kind of environment. You see, because all of us have fought a battle that resulted in us being awarded the Medal of Honor. But with this award comes another battle, that battle that I fought in that cave of, we all have to come to an answer, why me? Why did I get this? And that's the core of what the Medal of Honor is, because I believe that most of us who have this Medal of Honor, everyone that I've talked with, and myself, I finally came to realize that this Medal of Honor is not really about me. I've come to realize that the Medal of Honor is not about any one person who did any one thing on any one day. The Medal of Honor is the honor that comes with it is the honor that it represents more than one person. When people see this medal, we hope that they see that this medal represents the millions of men and women who have loved this country, who have loved this freedom, who have embraced the values of courage and sacrifice, commitment, so much that they would be willing to go anywhere at any time, at any cost, to defend those freedoms that we have. We hope that when people see this Medal of Honor, they see that they'll get a message that there's a different way to live your life, which is so critical, especially today, because our society is really gone into a real battle about what's important in life. And this Medal of Honor and those who wear it, every time we get an opportunity to share, and at our conventions, we go out to schools all the time and we talk to students and we share with them that there is a different way to live your life. There's a way to live your life about caring for others more than yourself. There's a way to live your life by instilling in you the values of courage, being committed to the truths that this country was founded upon, being committed to citizenship and patriotism, being committed to sacrifice for others, caring for others more than yourself. So those conventions that we go to provide us an environment to kind of mutually support one another, encourage one another, but then to get out into the community and share this message about what the Medal of Honor means and about the core values that are associated with the Medal of Honor, which is one of the great things about this series, the seminars, because we'll have the opportunity to be able to share with students the 6 values that are represented in the Medal of Honor.
Well, that's very well said, and I don't believe I can even manage to top that. I will say for everyone out there that Gary's book is available. Blaze of Light. You can see he's got his copy there by his bedside. This one arrived at my mailbox Monday, and I read the whole thing, folks, and it's a very inspiring story. I mean, if you need something to get inspired about personally in terms of core values of your life, this book will do it. This book will do it for you. And so I highly recommend it. And I think we got some time for some questions out there. Tim.
Hello, and thank you everyone for attending. And as you can imagine, we have lots of questions, and unfortunately, not enough time to answer them all. I want you to know in advance we're going to collect these questions, and Gary has graciously agreed to try to answer as many as possible. So as long as your email is there, if we don't get to your question, we will forward those questions to him. So I'm just going to start at the top and run around a little bit and try to answer a few or ask a few. By the way, my name is Tim Nelson. I'm the Chief of Development for the Heritage Foundation, and excited about having the opportunity to speak with you. So, Gary, from Abraham, a question is, in what language did you speak to the Montagnards in? What was the language you communicated to them with?
Well, it may surprise you, but most of the Montagnards spoke Vietnamese, but I didn't learn Vietnamese. But each Montagnard tribe had their own language as well. It wasn't a written language, but I lived with a tribe called the Sedang. So I spoke Sedang with them, it's kind of like a language, gestures. It was a fun way to learn how to communicate for a 24-year-old boy to go in and learn this language. It was a real challenge. I also worked with another tribe called the Banar, and then a tribe called the Jarai. And as I said, each one of those tribes spoke their own language because each one of those tribes had their own area within the highlands, the jungles of Vietnam. and they were very careful to avoid each other's areas, because they were tribes. I mean, there was rights that they had. They believed that their ancestry was involved with the land. It's much like the American Indians when they're here. There was different tribes in different sections of the country. The same with the Montagnards. And each one of those tribes had their own language. The one that I spoke the most was Sedang.
Thank you. So speaking to that, Ryan asked, when you talk about being with all these different tribes, Ryan asked whether or not, what was the most difficult thing for you to learn from the Montagnards? Was it different for each tribe, or what was the most difficult thing, lifestyle, language? What was the hardest thing for you?
Well, it may sound, surprisingly, it wasn't hard to not get used to having a TV or a car or anything like that, because I didn't miss any of those comforts. I think the hardest part for me was being responsible for their health and being the medic on the team. Each Montagnard tribe had a witch doctor. So not only did I have to practice medicine, the Western medicine, but I had to become familiar with the witch doctor and all their chants and all their incantations and all their sacrifices. And we worked hand in hand many times. But the hardest part for me, I would say, is when I was not able to help one of the villagers. And unfortunately, they died from either malaria or cholera or some other illness. Because during the time that I lived with them, because of the camaraderie and the feeling of community that we had, each of us Americans became a contributing member of that community. We became a part of that tribe. And we were so close that when a tribe member died, we hurt too. And there were many young infants that died. We had individuals that died from snake bites. We had individuals that died from being attacked by tigers. Living in a jungle had its challenges, not to mention the war that was going on. But the hardest thing for me was losing someone that I loved and not being able to care for them.
Thank you. So another question that was asked from Kathy was, you mentioned that not only being a medic, but you were also the veterinarian. What kind of animals did you care for when you were there?
Chickens, dogs, water buffalo. Water buffalo were an important part of the Montagnard culture. Not only did they use them for as work animals and stuff, but they also used them as a sacrifice. So the water buffaloes were a very precious commodity to these Montagnards. Also took care of a couple monkeys. We had some monkey pets, which monkeys don't make good pets, by the way. But we had some monkeys. We had chickens. But the water buffalo was the greatest challenge. I remember once they came to me and they said, Boxy is Vietnamese for doctor. And they always called me Boxy. They said, Boxy, our water buffalo, our prize water buffalo, he had an infection in one of his antlers and his horns. And we had to try to clean that infection up and then treat it. And you've never seen anything so funny as a group of people trying to hold down a water buffalo while I'm taking care of washing the infection and trying to debride all the infection out of it. It was like riding. It was like riding a bronco, a bull riding contest. It was just a funny thing. I write about it in my book about that whole incident. It was a funny thing, but that was one of the funniest incidents I had with caring for the animals as a veterinarian. Thank you.
So Ron asked, and I know personally because you and I have spoken about it. So I know this is a tough question for you, but have you ever had the opportunity to contact with Deo's family? Did you have the opportunity to talk about his bravery and the bond that you shared? were you able to ever share that with his loved ones?
Dale and I were very, very close. And I remember one time asking him about his family. I talked about girls back home and things like that. And I asked him if he ever had a girlfriend. And he just kind of smiled and said, no, not yet. I asked him about his family. And I remember his answer to me that really impacted me. He just looked at me and he said, Boxy, you're my family. You're my family. So I'm imagining that his family had all been killed. He did have one brother who was in that picture. His brother was up on the top row. His name was Brer, but Brer was killed during the siege too, along with Dale. Interesting side note, the only one that survived on that in our security team was a 14-year-old boy at the time named Bray. He was our interpreter. He now lives in Anchorage, Alaska, but he's the only Montagnard in that picture that is still alive. And I contact him we contact each other about 2 or 3 times a month. But Bray always just said, Boxy, you're my family.
So, Gary, we've heard stories as both Tom shared and you shared about folks who return home and face the being spit on, the hatred. As you look back on that today, what life lessons did you learn from that, or things that you carry with you today about how you were treated when you came home?
When I think about life lessons, Tim, I think about, I'm not sure if Mike can put up that last slide or not, but there's a life lesson that I learned that means a lot to me, that helped me deal with all the hurt and all the pain that I came back from Vietnam with. And that life lesson was, originally I saw that on a sign in our team house, but it means a lot to me. And when I talk with young people, this is one of the lessons I try to leave with them, is that to really live, you must almost die. And when I said that to our 7th graders the first time, they said, Mr. B, are you telling me that I'm going to have to die in order if I want to really live? And I say, not die physically, Eric, but you may have to learn how to die to yourself. If you want to really live, you need to realize that there's a different way to live your life. And you can only experience really living by realizing that other people are important to you, realizing that there's something more important than yourself in this life, realizing that to really live, maybe die to yourself. And to those who fight for it, life has a meaning the protected will never know. I realized in that cave that the battles in Vietnam were not really out in the jungle. Battles are fought and they're won or lost, not out here. Battles are fought and won or lost in our own heart and in our minds. That's where we win or lose the battles. And the weapons that we have to fight those battles are the values that we believe in. Values such as courage, commitment, sacrifice. When you're faced with a situation, you have to fight a battle of, am I going to do the right thing? What am I going to do when I see somebody being bullied? What am I going to do when I see somebody stealing something that doesn't belong to them? To those that fight for it, and they fight that battle in their own heart and their mind, and they use the value of courage, sacrifice, commitment to make that decision to do the right thing, life is going to have a meaning for them that those who choose not to fight, they'll never know what it means to really live, because all they're doing is they're living for themselves. They just want to bring everything they can into their life. They're selfish. They're not concerned about other people. I had to learn that if I wanted to really live, I was going to have to die to myself. And that meant forgiving others, forgiving the enemy that killed my friends, forgiving the country that spit on me, forgiving myself. But to really live, I had to deny myself, which meant forgiving myself. And I came out of that cave. I fought in that cave. I fought harder in that cave than I did in Vietnam because I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in that cave. I knew I needed to heal. I knew I needed to come out of that cave. And I fought for the meaning of life. To those who fight for it, life does have a meaning that the protected will never know. And I came out of that cave knowing what life is really all about. It's about caring for others. It's about sharing. It's about making a difference in the lives of others. And you can't do that if you're going to hate and be angry and non-forgiving to other people. I've forgiven those who have hurt me because I realized that if I wanted to build my life, I couldn't build my life on anger and hate. I had to build my life on love and forgiveness. So I would encourage, as I encourage all students, the 33 years that I worked with them, that if you really want to live, you must almost die to yourself and fight for it. Fight with those values that I'm trying to instill in you, the values of being courageous. Courage is nothing more than just love in action. That's what courage means to me. Love in action. Use the weapon of courage, sacrifice. Use the weapon of commitment to win those battles. And if you do, life will have a meaning to you that those who choose not to fight, those who choose to stay in their comfort zone, those who choose to run away from conflict, those who choose not to make a difference in the life of others, they'll never know what it means to really live.
So I have another question. I'm going to combine two questions, one from Wayne and one from Abraham. It's about your time as a middle school counselor. So the combined question is, how did your students react when they found out or understood that you had been awarded the Medal of Honor? And do you think they appreciated that and understood that? And secondly, were you able to help transmit over the years to young people the values that you learned in Vietnam and the values that we're talking about today?
Those are good questions. And I'm not sure, but maybe it was just the students that I worked with the 33 years, but most of those students in middle school had no idea what the Medal of Honor was. They knew what a Purple Heart was, but the only way that I could get them to even get any kind of appreciation or awareness of the Medal of Honor is I'd say, did you see the movie Forrest Gump? And they would say, yeah, I saw Forrest Gump. And they say, oh, same thing, just like Forrest Gump, that medal, that's what I got. And they go, oh. And did they appreciate that? I don't know as they appreciated the Medal of Honor, but I think one of the greatest things that I've taken away from working all those years with middle school students is that I maintain a Facebook page for past students. And at the present time, I have over 500 former students who are now in the military. 500 former students who are now serving this country. And more than that, there are students who chose not to go in the military, but they become doctors. They become contributing members of society. I still get contact from them telling me how much they, about some of the stories that I would tell them. They don't remember a lot, but boy, they'll always remember the stories. You know, I've learned that many times people forget the knowledge, but boy, you tell something in a story, by way of a story, and people will always remember the story. And these students always remember the stories. But over 500 of them are now in the military. So I have to think that somehow, somewhere along the line, a message about service, a message about denying yourself, a message about valuing something greater than yourself had to be communicated to these young people.
Thank you. So I'm going to combine another question from I think I'm going to say this correctly, Yosu, and from Sergeant Major retired Lynch, a junior ROTC instructor. And they both ask a similar question. Yosu is on his way to be a future officer, and both of them want to know, what advice would you give, leadership advice, books you might recommend to guide young people in their lives today and into the future?
I remember when I was first asked to go to West Point to speak to some graduates of West Point, and I thought, my gosh, what do I know about leadership? I only was a buck sergeant at E5, and I was lucky to remain a buck sergeant. I had to make it a couple times because I kept on getting busted. But then I thought, I followed some great leaders. I followed some men that I would follow into battle, and that I did follow into battle, and that I would die for. What did they teach me? And one of the lessons that they taught me is that you will never truly lead until you learn to serve. And you'll never truly serve until you learn that there's something more important in life than yourself. Self is the greatest obstacle to any form of leadership. And leadership in the military is unique because as a leader in the military, you may be asking someone to do something that may result in their loss of life. You're asking them to give up something, their life, for something else. And in the Army or in any of the services, you can't lead somebody by having them follow a business plan or a flow chart. Men won't follow a flow chart, and you need something more than just a locker room pep talk to encourage somebody to go into battle, because they won't follow a flow chart, but they will follow you. They will follow you if you can show them that there is something more important than themselves, that there is something to live for, something to die for, something that's more valuable. They will follow you if you can show them that you believe it because you've experienced it, because you know that there's something more important than self. So you'll never really truly lead until you learn to serve, and you'll never serve until you learn that there's something more important than yourself. And that goes back that to really live, you must almost die, realizing that there's something in this life greater than me. It's a tremendous lesson to learn. But if you can learn that, life will have a meaning to you that others will just never, ever know. And if you can learn that, you will find that you are a leader. People will see that there's something different about you. You seem to know something, you hear something, you see something that others don't. And what you see is a vision. And if you can realize that there's something more important than yourself, if you can have that as a vision and you follow that, others will follow you.
Thank you. Those were wonderful answers. I guess we may have time for one more, and it's a combination of three folks, Ruth, Alyssa, and Luis. Talk about your recovery from your wounds, your service, the time that you might have been facing fears. How important was spirituality to you in your service? How did you face that? Did you seek help spiritually? So these folks want to know if there was a spiritual component, if you will.
Spiritual component is a very important part of my life. People often ask me, was I ever afraid at any time? When Deo and I were dragging each other along in the midst of that battle, did I ever feel fear? And I honestly have to tell them that I didn't feel fear. I didn't experience fear because I experienced something else at that time. I experienced something that was stronger than fear. When Deo and I would be dragging each other and I would kind of go unconscious, he would hit me in the face and say, come on, Boxy, you've got to keep on going. When he would go unconscious, I would encourage him. What we were sharing was something that was greater than fear. It overpowered fear, and what that was love. There was a love that was shared between the two of us that was stronger than any fear. And in my life, in the cave especially, I realized that there was something stronger than fear about life. I went into that cave because I was afraid and because I wanted to forget, thinking that forgetting was getting better. Going into that cave, I learned that forgetting isn't getting better. Getting better is finding someone who will go into that cave with you. And no matter what they find in that cave, they will love you. They will never leave you. They will always be there to support you. They will be there to hurt with you. I found someone who came into that cave with me. Someone who came into that cave with me was my God and my wife. I met my wife down in this little town of Lancaster, New Hampshire, fell in love with her, asked her to marry me. And she said, I'll marry you, but you got to come out of your cave. And she said she never went into that cave, but in 45 years of marriage, she's gone into many emotional caves. She's been there just like God, to love me, to forgive me, that no matter what she finds, we know that together, with the grace of God and the love of God, we can overcome anything. And that has been the most significant thing in my life, is realizing that my wife and my God are always with me.
Wow, that I just don't think we could close any better than that. On behalf of the foundation, on behalf of our participants today, Sergeant Beikirch, I just thank you so much for. I've gotten to know you, and as a veteran as well, I can tell you that I'm always honored to speak with recipients, and I'm honored with your friendship. And thank you for your time. So I want to encourage you all to check your mailbox. We're going to try to answer your questions. Also share this opportunity by going to our website and our YouTube channel. Let everyone know who wasn't here today what they missed, and take the opportunity to let them know we've got 6 more wonderful weeks starting next week on the 10th of September, when Colonel Vossler will be back to speak with Corporal Woody Williams, our World War II recipient, where he was awarded the Medal of Honor. Will be speaking about courage, and we'd love to have you back. In the meantime, if you want to know more, please don't forget to look for Gary's book. It is a wonderful book, and look at Tom's books. He's written 4. Colonel Vossler, and we thank you all for being here. Everyone have a wonderful and blessed rest of your week. Thank you, everyone.
Just Gary, thanks, buddy. That was marvelous. A lot of very sound advice, particularly the youngsters in the world. We are trying to bring messages to you, and you certainly accomplished that tonight. So, folks, we'll see you next week with Woody. He's only one of 2 surviving World War II Medal of Honor recipients.
That's right.